Max had always been a boy of few words, content to spend his days in the company of his dog, Rex. The two of them had grown up together, inseparable from the moment Max was old enough to walk. Rex, a golden retriever with an infectious enthusiasm and a heart as big as the sky, had been there for every milestone, every scraped knee, every failed attempt at riding a bike, and every long, lonely afternoon when Max just needed someone to sit beside him. It wasn't that Max didn't have friends at school. He did, but they were different, more interested in video games, sports, or the latest trends than in anything Max could really connect with. Rex, on the other hand, was always there, always ready to listen, always eager to share the silence in the way only a dog could. It didn't matter if Max had a bad day or if he had no words to speak. Rex was always there, his eyes full of understanding, his tail wagging with an unspoken promise that no matter what, everything would be okay. The world outside seemed to move at a faster pace than Max could keep up with. The days were long, full of homework, chores, and endless responsibilities. But at the end of every day, there was Rex, waiting by the door, his eyes lighting up the moment Max entered. It was the same routine, day after day, but it was one Max could always count on. One Saturday afternoon, Max and Rex went for their usual walk through the park. The weather was warm, the air fresh with the scent of pine trees and damp earth from the recent rain. Max's hands were in his pockets, his mind wandering as he strolled along the path, his sneakers kicking up small clouds of dust. Rex, as always, trotted ahead, his leash slack in the air, sniffing at the ground and occasionally darting after a squirrel or bird that caught his eye. Max smiled, watching his dog's carefree movements, feeling the familiar comfort of the routine. But today, there was something different about the air, something that made Max's heart feel heavy. As they reached the end of the park, Max paused at the old wooden bench by the fountain. Rex came back to him, panting lightly, and sat down at his feet, looking up with those warm golden eyes. Max bent down and scratched behind his ears, as he always did. "You know, Rex," Max began, his voice quiet as he gazed at the fountain, "sometimes I think I'm the only one who gets what it's like. Everyone else has their own lives, their own interests, but you're always here for me. You always get it, don't you?" Rex wagged his tail in response, his gaze unwavering. Max chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Maybe it's just me being weird, but I don't know what I'd do without you, buddy." The sky was beginning to darken as the sun sank lower, casting long shadows across the park. Max stood up and stretched, tugging on Rex's leash as he began to make his way home. But just as they were about to leave, something strange happened. A car pulled up beside them, its engine purring quietly. The window rolled down, and Max turned, surprised to see a man staring at him. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice deep and smooth. "That's quite a dog you've got there. Beautiful, isn't he?" Max felt an odd shiver run down his spine. He wasn't used to strangers striking up conversations, especially not about Rex. But there was something in the man's voice that made him pause, something unsettling in his calm demeanor. "Yeah, he's great," Max replied, his voice cautious. The man smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I can see that. How much would you say he's worth? A dog like that, I bet he's got quite a pedigree." Max felt his pulse quicken. The question felt wrong, and he instinctively stepped closer to Rex. "He's not for sale," Max said firmly, his hand tightening on the leash. The man's smile faltered for a moment, but then he laughed softly, almost like it was all a joke. Of course. Just thought I'd ask. You know, there are people who'd pay handsomely for a dog like that. You could make a lot of money." Max didn't know what to say. He felt a knot form in his stomach. There was something about the man's words that didn't sit right with him. Rex, sensing the tension, stood up and moved closer to Max, his body language protective. The man noticed, his smile fading slightly, and he gave a small, almost dismissive shrug. "Never mind," he said. "Just a thought. You take care of that dog. They don't come around like that often." Without another word, the man drove away, leaving Max and Rex standing in the shadow of the park's entrance. Max watched the car disappear into the distance, his mind racing with unease. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, that the stranger had been more interested in Rex than he had let on. The walk home felt longer than usual. The neighborhood, once familiar and comforting, now seemed different. Max kept looking over his shoulder, as if expecting the man to appear again. Rex trotted alongside him, glancing up every now and then with a worried expression, sensing his owner's unease. That night, after dinner, Max tried to shake off the feeling that had settled in his chest. It was probably nothing, he told himself, just some strange encounter. But the nagging sensation lingered, gnawing at him. He went to bed late, lying awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. Rex, as always, was curled up at his feet, but tonight, even he seemed restless, his usual comforting presence more jittery than usual. The next day, everything changed. Max woke up to find the door slightly ajar. At first, he thought he had simply forgotten to lock it the night before, but then he noticed something else. Rex was gone. His heart slammed against his chest. He jumped out of bed, rushing to the front door, his mind a blur of panic. He ran through the house, calling Rex's name, but there was no answer. No wagging tail, no excited bark. Only silence. Max's mind raced. He searched the yard, the street, even the neighbor's garden, but Rex was nowhere to be found. Panic clawed at his insides, and as the hours passed, a creeping dread began to settle in. Had the man from the park come back? Had he taken Rex? Max ran through every possible scenario in his mind. He thought of every time he'd let Rex out for a walk, every time they had played in the yard. There had never been any sign of trouble, no indication that someone might have been watching. But now, as he stood in the middle of his empty house, the only thought that consumed him was the fear that his best friend had been stolen. For the next few days, Max scoured the town. He put up flyers, knocked on doors, and even visited animal shelters, asking if anyone had found a golden retriever. But nothing. There was no sign of Rex anywhere. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. The once quiet, comforting neighborhood felt like a different place now. Max's world was a haze of worry, filled with sleepless nights and constant searching. One evening, just as the sun began to set, Max received a call. His heart raced as he answered, the voice on the other end cold and unfamiliar. "If you want your dog back," the voice said, "meet me at the old warehouse by the river. Midnight." Max's blood ran cold. He knew exactly where the man meant, the same place he'd driven past with Rex just days ago. His mind spun with thoughts of what to do, but there was only one thing he could think of. He had to get Rex back, no matter the cost. That night, he arrived at the warehouse, the dim moonlight casting long shadows over the abandoned building. His footsteps echoed in the stillness, and every part of him screamed to turn around, to run. But he didn't. He couldn't.